Welcome, deep divers. For those of you prepping for that SPHR exam or, just looking to sharpen your strategic HR toolkit, get ready. Today we're taking a deep dive into, well, a really critical landscape. Corporate governance and ethics. Our mission here is simple. Extract the most important nuggets, give you those aha moments, and really help cement this content for your SPHR success. We'll tackle core definitions, governance, fiduciary duty, that kind of thing. We'll explore the big U.S. regulatory giants, Sarbanes-Oxley and Dodd-Frank, and really zero in on their HR impacts. We'll also talk about HR's strategic role in, fostering ethical leadership, protecting whistleblowers. And we'll even unpack some infamous corporate scandals. Should be interesting. And, of course, SPHR exam tips and common pitfalls. We've got you covered.
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating here is that these aren't just terms to memorize for a test, not at all. Understanding them is, well, it's the bedrock of organizational integrity, accountability. As an SPHR leader, these concepts, they're going to shape your strategic decisions. They define the ethical compass of your organization. So we'll connect these ideas directly to real-life applications so you grasp not just what they are, but why they fundamentally matter for your career.
Okay, perfect. So to kick us off, let's build a solid foundation. Some key terms first. First up, corporate governance. Now, many people think it's just about rules, but it's really about balancing power, isn't it, among all these diverse stakeholders, shareholders, management, the board.
Right, customers too. Think of it like an organization's internal constitution. It defines who has power, how decisions get made, checks and balances constantly under pressure. It's the whole system, rules, processes, practices that directs and controls a company.
And the goal is balancing all those interests, ensuring accountability, transparency. The board of directors, they heard the ultimate responsibility here, right? Providing oversight, strategic direction.
Exactly. Oversight and direction. That's key for the SPHR exam, actually. The board provides oversight. Management handles the day-to-day operations. Getting that distinction wrong is a common pitfall.
Good tip. So the board sets direction, but that direction comes with a serious obligation. Talk about fiduciary duty.
Ah, yes, fiduciary duty. This is the highest standard of care and loyalty. It absolutely demands that fiduciaries, board members, corporate officers always put the company's interests above their own. No exceptions.
Highest standard. And it has two parts.
Two critical components, yes.
Yeah.
First, the duty of loyalty. That means acting honestly, avoiding conflicts of interest. A board member can't just siphon off a business opportunity for themselves. Second is the duty of care. That requires making informed decisions, doing your homework, basically, like thoroughly reviewing all the relevant info before okaying a big merger.
And if they breach that duty?
Oh, there are significant legal consequences. It's not just a slap on the wrist. For you, as a senior HR leader, understanding this means supporting the board's need for independent judgment, especially when you might be presenting sensitive ethics investigations. The board needs to act objectively.
Okay, that makes sense. So governance is the structure. Fiduciary duty is the compass. What keeps things on track day to day? Compliance.
Exactly. That's where compliance comes in. It's about adhering to all the rules, laws, regulations, standards, even your own internal ethical practices.
So playing by the rules, both external ones like OSHA or data privacy laws, and internal company policies.
Precisely. And the whole point of having a compliance program is to prevent violations in the first place, but also to detect and address them if they do happen. The stakes are incredibly high: fines, lawsuits, reputational damage, sometimes even criminal penalties.
And HR is right in the thick of it, aren't we? Setting standards, training, monitoring, making sure there are reporting channels people actually trust and use without fear of retaliation.
Absolutely critical role. And remember the distinction for the exam. Compliance is mandatory. It's the letter of the law.
Right, the must-dos, which leads us nicely into the should-dos, maybe.
Yeah.
The ethical climate.
You got it. Ethical climate. While compliance covers the legal necessities, the ethical climate is more about the shared understanding within the organization. What does everyone believe is ethically correct behavior? How are ethical issues really handled?
So it's like the moral atmosphere.
That's a great way to put it. The moral atmosphere. It's shaped by the norms, the values, the attitudes, the behaviors the organization encourages or discourages. A healthy ethical climate fosters trust, encourages ethical thinking, respect. It naturally reduces wrongdoing and, interestingly, improves job satisfaction too.
In a poor climate.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen examples like Wells Fargo, right?
Right.
Where it just breeds misbehavior.
Exactly. You gauge it by asking, do people feel safe speaking up? Do leaders actually address issues quickly and consistently? Or do they just, shoot the messenger? Is ethics talked about beyond the annual training? It's about doing what's right even when it's not legally required. That's the spirit of the law.
Okay, foundation laid, definitions clear. Now let's get into the really interesting part, the legal frameworks that shape all this in the U.S., and importantly, how they impact HR. These laws didn't just appear out of thin air, right? They came after some major corporate scandals.
That's right, particularly in the early 2000s and then again after the 2008 crisis. These events forced legislative action.
So first up, the big one, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or SOX, from 2002. Why was that passed?
SOX was a direct, almost visceral response to the massive accounting frauds we saw at companies like Enron and WorldCom. Public trust was shattered. The goal was crystal clear: improve corporate disclosure accuracy, protect stakeholders, and really enforce accountability at the very top. Enron's collapse was the main trigger.
And it brought in some heavy-hitting provisions, stricter accounting oversight.
Right, the PCAOB was created, new auditor independence rules, and crucially, that CEO-CFO personal certification of financial statements. They couldn't just delegate blame anymore, personal responsibility.
And Section 404, enhanced internal controls. That sounds like a big one for HR.
Huge! Management and auditors had to report on the effectiveness of internal controls over financial reporting. Think about HR's role there, documenting and testing processes for things like payroll accuracy, benefits administration, even PTO accruals. Workforce costs are a major financial component. SOX forced investment in better HR systems for many companies.
Makes sense. And the whistleblower protections, Section 806.
Yes, very important. SOX made it illegal to retaliate against employees who reported suspected fraud. It also required companies to set up anonymous reporting mechanisms, often hotlines reporting directly to the board's audit committee.
So HR often became the front line for handling those complaints, ensuring anti-retaliation policies are real, not just paper.
Exactly. Handling intake, ensuring proper escalation. SOX also required codes of ethics for financial officers and increased penalties for white-collar crime. Oh, and it banned personal loans to executives, too.
So connecting this back, SOX really shook up corporate governance in the U.S.
Radically changed it. Accountability at the top, rigorous financial integrity, that's the big picture.
Yep.
For your SPHR exam, definitely expect questions on SOX's purpose combating fraud, restoring trust in specifics like whistleblower protection or internal controls.
Good to know. Okay, fast forward about 8 years.
Yeah.
2010, the next big shakeup, the Dodd-Frank Act. What prompted that?
The 2008 financial crisis, the fallout, the public outcry over things like massive executive bonuses at failing firms, the general sense of a lack of accountability. Dodd-Frank was the sweeping overhaul, primarily aimed at financial industry regulation.
And how did it impact governance and HR specifically?
Several key ways. First, it enhanced whistleblower protections even beyond SOX. It created the SEC Whistleblower Program, which was a game changer because it offered potential financial rewards 10 to 30% of sanctions over $1 million to whistleblowers reporting securities law violations directly to the SEC.
Wow, financial rewards. That definitely raises the stakes for companies to have strong internal programs, right? You'd want employees to report internally first.
Absolutely. It also broadened the definition of protected activity and allowed whistleblowers to sue directly for retaliation with remedies like double back pay. Though there's a nuance, the Supreme Court later clarified that Dodd-Frank's anti-retaliation mainly applies if you report to the SEC, whereas SOX covers internal reporting too. Important distinction.
Okay. What else did Dodd-Frank bring in? I remember something about executive pay.
Yes, several things. Say on pay, Section 951, public companies now have to give shareholders a non-binding vote on executive compensation at least every 3 years. It increases board accountability for those pay decisions. They have to be defensible.
And clawbacks.
Right. Section 954 mandated policies to reclaim or claw back incentive pay if it was based on financial results that later had to be restated due to misconduct. It also required compensation committees to be composed of independent directors with the authority to hire their own independent consultants.
Plus more transparency, like the CEO to median employee pay ratio disclosure.
Exactly. Pay ratio, pay for performance disclosures, all aimed at increasing transparency and accountability around executive comp. So for HR, Dodd-Frank meant heightened stakes on anti-retaliation, more engagement with shareholders on pay, writing clawback clauses into agreements, and preparing all those new pay disclosures.
So Dodd-Frank really continued that governance reform trend SOX started, but with a laser focus on the financial industry and empowering shareholders and whistleblowers even more.
That's a great summary. For the SPHR exam, think Say-on pay, whistleblower rewards, clawbacks, executive compensation oversight. Those are your Dodd-Frank buzzwords. If a question mentions financial rewards for whistleblowers, the answer is likely Dodd-Frank.
Okay, super helpful. So we've got the concepts, we've got the major laws. Now let's bring it home. What does this all mean for you, the SPHR leader listening right now? How do we translate this into action?
This is where HR becomes the bridge, really, the bridge between these high-level principles and the daily behavior within the organization.
And a huge part of that is setting the ethical tone, right? Working with leadership.
Absolutely crucial. That tone at the top idea is real. HR plays a key role in defining, communicating, and helping leaders model the organization's values and code of ethics. It's about ensuring leaders walk the talk. This means training them on ethical decision-making, maybe using 360-degree feedback that includes ethical dimensions.
And having the courage sometimes to hold leaders accountable, even high performers.
That's often the toughest part, but yes. Confronting a high-performing VP who bullies, for example, that sends a powerful message, and you need to embed ethics into all your HR practices.
How so? Give us some examples.
Okay, think about recruitment. Are you hiring for values fit, not just skills? Using ethical scenario questions in interviews, integrity tests, performance management. Are you evaluating how results are achieved, not just what was achieved? Is there an ethics component in appraisals? Compensation. Are incentives aligned with ethical behavior, using balanced scorecards, not just pure financial targets that might inadvertently drive the wrong actions, avoiding that Wells Fargo problem?
Right, making sure incentives don't create perverse motivation. And training, obviously.
Training and development, yes. Going beyond just the mandatory compliance click-throughs, focusing leadership development on ethical leadership competencies. On the SPHR exam, if you see a question asking for the best example of HR promoting an ethical culture, look for answers related to integrating ethics into core systems like performance management and rewards, and demonstrating intolerance for unethical behavior, even from top performers.
Got it. So setting the tone, embedding ethics. What about accountability and making it safe for people to speak up? The whistleblower piece again.
Yes, building accountability and robust reporting systems. HR often administers the ethics hotline or other reporting channels. Your job is to make sure these channels are well communicated, that people understand they can be confidential or anonymous, and crucially, that reports are taken seriously.
How do you measure if that's working? Can you measure a speak-up culture?
You can try. One metric is the hotline usage rate number of reports per 100 employees, say. Now, here's the paradox. A higher reporting rate isn't necessarily bad. It could mean people trust the system and feel safe using it. 0 reports might actually indicate fear.
Interesting. So you did contest. What else?
Track whistleblower retaliation claims. The goal there is obviously 0. Any uptick is a massive red flag. And training completion rates, basic but boards often ask. Ethical culture survey scores, asking employees directly how comfortable they feel reporting, their perceptions of management ethics.
And HR's role in protecting those who do speak up.
Frontline. Reminding managers about the anti-retaliation policy, ensuring investigations into alleged retaliation happen urgently and fairly. Promoting the idea that reporting concerns is actually an act of loyalty to the company's values. And HR often leads or collaborates on the investigations themselves into fraud, harassment, other ethics breaches, ensuring they're thorough, impartial, and that consequences are applied consistently no matter who is involved.
So a typical SPHR scenario might be employee reports a serious ethics violation by a top sales exec. What should HR do?
Key steps: acknowledge the report promptly. Protect confidentiality as much as possible. Investigate thoroughly and objectively. And this is critical. Take appropriate, consistent action based on the findings, regardless of the employee's rank or performance level. The pitfall is letting that high performer off the hook. That just destroys the ethical climate.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Now let's ground these concepts even further. Let's talk about some of those real-world cautionary tales. These stories really drive home why this matters.
They absolutely do. History provides some stark lessons here.
Let's start with the classic, Enron, early 2000s. What was the core failure there from a governance perspective?
Oh, Enron was a perfect storm. Massive accounting fraud, hiding debt in off-balance sheet entities. You had the CFO with glaring conflicts of interest profiting personally. And crucially, the board failed in its fiduciary duty. They actually waived the company's code of ethics for the CFO. They didn't question incredibly complex transactions, just weak oversight, despite having some prominent names on the board.
And there was an internal whistleblower, Sharon Watkins.
Yes, she tried to raise alarms internally. The outcome, as we know, was catastrophic. Bankruptcy, jobs, and life savings wiped out. And as we mentioned, it directly led to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the lesson for HR, the importance of speaking truth to power, but also recognizing and addressing a toxic culture. Enron's infamous rank and yank system bred fear and cutthroat competition.
Okay, fast forward to a more recent example. Wells Fargo around 2016. Different kind of failure.
Very different, but equally damaging. This was less about complex accounting fraud and more about a toxic sales culture run amok. You had this intense pressure, unrealistic sales goals, that 8 is great mantra pushing cross-selling at all costs. The incentive system was perverse. Jobs and bonuses depended on hitting aggressive daily targets,
Which led employees to
create millions of unauthorized customer accounts just to meet those targets. It was systemic. And leadership, including HR to some extent, failed. The public messaging was all about integrity, but the internal reality was that only sales numbers mattered. Whistleblowers were ignored or retaliated against. Their initial response was to fire over 5,000 lower-level employees, the bad apples, instead of fixing the root cause, the incentive system and the culture.
and the outcome.
Huge fines. Eventually, the CEO and other top execs resigned or were fired, and they had millions clawed back from their compensation. The lesson for HR here is profound. You must audit your incentive programs for unintended consequences. You must listen to employee feedback, look for red flags in engagement surveys, and ethics cannot be secondary to performance metrics. That tone in the middle matters immensely.
Wow. Okay, one more. Theranos. The Silicon Valley darn, that wasn't. What went wrong there?
Theranos is fascinating. Elizabeth Holmes, the charismatic founder, built the company on fraudulent blood testing technology. Flat-out lies to investors, partners, the board, everyone. The culture was one of extreme secrecy, intimidation, and fear. Whistleblowers like Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung faced serious threats before eventually going public to the Wall Street Journal.
And the board. Yeah, they had some big names.
A star-studded board, yes. But critically, it lacked relevant scientific or medical expertise. They seemed captivated by Holmes's charisma and failed to exercise their duty of care. They didn't ask the hard questions, didn't demand independent verification. As a private company initially, they didn't even have an audit committee for a while. Just a massive failure of oversight.
And the result was the company's total collapse and Holmes's conviction.
Exactly. The lessons. The courage needed to challenge a powerful, charismatic leader. The vital importance of having a board with diverse and relevant expertise. The need for active, independent oversight and transparency, even in private companies. Good governance isn't just for public giants.
So, Enron highlights board oversight failures leading to SOX. Wells Fargo shows the danger of provost incentives and ignoring culture. Theranos underscores the need for transparency and independent expert oversight.
Precisely. And in every case, you can see where a stronger, more strategic HR function, empowered to champion ethics and raise concerns, could have potentially made a difference.
All right, fantastic context. Now let's pivot specifically to the SPHR exam. Let's nail down some common pitfalls, potential distractors, and key metrics related to governance and ethics.
Good idea. This is where you apply all that knowledge strategically for the test.
Okay, first up, common pitfalls. What trips people up? I mentioned one earlier, confusing the roles of the board and management.
Yes, that's a big one. Remember, board, governance, oversight, strategic direction, management, operational decisions, day-to-day execution. Who ensures the governance framework is effective? The board. Who implements the annual ethics training program? Management, usually with HR leading it. Know the difference.
What else? Conflating related concepts.
Definitely. Be clear on legal compliance, the must-dos, versus ethical, doing right beyond the law, the should-dos, and don't confuse those with corporate social responsibility, which is often broader, thinking about community impact, sustainability, etc. They overlap, but they aren't the same.
And the fiduciary duty terms.
Know the two main ones: duty of care, diligence, making informed decisions, versus duty of loyalty, avoiding conflicts of interest, acting in the company's best interest. An exam question about a board member needing to disclose a potential conflict directly tests duty of loyalty.
Got it. And the whistleblower laws.
Remember the key distinctions. SOX brought in the core protections and required anonymous internal reporting channels. Dodd-Frank expanded protections, allowed direct lawsuits for retaliation under certain conditions, and crucially, introduced those financial rewards for reporting to the SEC. See financial rewards, think Dodd-Frank.
Okay. And finally, thinking about ethics programs.
Don't just think reactively or punitively. Effective programs are holistic, proactive, and preventative. They need written standards, clear communication, ongoing training, visible leadership support, safe reporting channels, consistent enforcement, and mechanisms for continuous improvement. It's a whole system.
Great points. Now, how do we measure this stuff? What are some key governance and ethics metrics HR should be aware of, potentially for the exam or just for practice?
Excellent question. Measuring this is tricky but important. We touched on some earlier. The ethics hotline reporting rate reports per 100 employees. Remember the paradox. 0 isn't necessarily good. Look at trends and also look at the substantiation rate. What percentage of reports are found to have merit? Around 40% is often considered typical, believe it or not.
Okay, what else?
Whistleblower retaliation claims. You want this metric at 0. Any uptick is a serious red flag requiring immediate investigation. Training completion rates and maybe assessment scores. Basic, but boards often want to see them. Ethical culture survey scores. These are powerful, direct employee feedback on whether they feel safe reporting, perceive leaders as ethical, believe rules are applied fairly.
Any others? Maybe from internal audit?
Yes, internal audit findings related to compliance or control breakdowns, compliance incident rates, and a governance metric. The board independence score. What percentage of the board directors are independent? A higher percentage, say 90% or more, is generally seen as stronger governance, reducing potential conflicts of interest.
And maybe metrics around the reporting process itself.
Good point. Hotline case closure time, are investigations timely? And the ratio of anonymous versus named reports, a higher rate of named reports might indicate greater trust in the process and less fear of retaliation.
So lots of potential metrics, but the key is interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Don't just take them at face value.
Exactly. Metrics need context and critical thinking. High training completion doesn't automatically mean people are behaving ethically. You need to look at the whole picture. The mindset you want to adopt for the exam and in your career is that of a strategic, ethical HR leader constantly assessing risk and health in these areas.
Perfect. So let's wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our listeners? In this SPHR deep dive, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground.
We really have, from core definitions to landmark laws and practical HR applications.
We clarified governance, fiduciary duty, compliance, ethical climate. We navigated SOX and Dodd-Frank, explored HR's strategic role, and learned from Enron, Wells Fargo, Theranos.
Hard-hitting lessons there.
Absolutely. By mastering these topics, you're not just preparing for a section of the SPHR exam. You're equipping yourself to be a true strategic partner who can foster an ethical, well-governed organization. That's the real goal, isn't it? That's the hallmark of strategic HR leadership.
Couldn't agree more. And as you reflect on all this, maybe mull over this final thought. What single cultural element in your organization, if you could influence it as an SPHR leader, would you prioritize to build true ethical resilience? That deep-seated commitment where employees consistently try to do the right thing, even when no one's watching, even when it's hard or inconvenient.
That's a powerful question.
Think about how you'd measure progress toward that and what specific actions HR could realistically take to foster it. That kind of thinking. That's the very essence of strategic HR and governance and ethics.
Fantastic closing thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into corporate governance and ethics. We really hope this helps solidify the concepts for your SPHR journey and beyond. Keep learning, keep applying these principles.